and welcome to another episode of Secrets of a B2B Marketer. Today we have with us Ms. Garima Saini, who is the marketing director at HCL. She's a tech marketer, having spent over 15 years in the business of marketing and revenue marketing specific related to tech companies. Garima has worked very closely in the space of demand marketing and account-based marketing, both fantastic domains that I am particularly keen to learn on. But what makes it special is that these are her passion areas and very close to her heart as a tech marketer. She's currently working as a marketing director for the North America with HCL Tech. Welcome to our show, Garima. Super excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Benita. So glad to be here and to be able to share whatever little knowledge I have gained over the past 15 years. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh, don't be humble. I know, having spoken to you, I know that you've had a very interesting journey, and there is a lot for all of us, myself, my team, and my listeners to learn from you. I would love for the audience to know a little more about your professional journey. We've spoken, but I would want us to share this journey with our audience. So over to you. Tell us a little bit about your professional journey.
Sure. Interestingly, I didn't start out as a marketer. I was campus placed into a tech company, and they placed me in the Oracle Apps practice. So I was a hardcore Oracle Apps consultant. But about 8 months into it, I realized that this is not where my heart lied. And since I'd majored in marketing in my MBA, I wanted to be there, And so I just started pestering my CMO, who had no idea who I was. But she was kind enough to give me a break. And then, I was she took me under her wing. And that's how the whole journey of tech marketing started. And also, another interesting point is that was the only organization where I was not into revenue marketing or growth marketing, because I was just starting out, right? So I was more of a comms person. I was doing communication, collateral development, and all of that. But after that, every role that I took up in whatever organization, it was always revenue marketing or business marketing, as we call it. And so it kind of was an unintentional segue, but an amazing one, to be honest. I enjoyed every bit of it. So it's been a great journey.
I think all of us have in our early years, or at least most of us in our early years, we did not know what we wanted. And so your example resonated so much with me, because when I got into an MBA marketing, I was not sure which way I was headed. I was thinking maybe I'll be a part of an ad agency, and then PR sounded like an exciting thing. So I said, maybe I'll do PR. So of course, social media did not even exist back then, right? We had ICQ and we had Orkut in those days. And I don't think anybody ever anticipated using those as marketing tools. But your whole journey is so beautiful, and I love the fact that you found a mentor, because I think that's one thing most of us struggle the most with. And when you're doing something as interesting as revenue marketing, and I suppose back then it wasn't even called revenue marketing, I'm not sure if it had a terminology, but what you're doing and how it's evolved sounds like a very interesting journey. Having gone through this journey, what is that one thing that you've learned about revenue marketing that you could share with us?
Actually, not one thing, but I'll tell you two, and two because both of them are non-negotiable. So the first and the most important thing is working very closely with sales, because as a revenue marketer, you would have targets, right? So some of us will have lead targets, some of us will have conversion targets. I personally have had revenue targets in the past. So when you are working very hard to achieve those targets, we kind of sometimes forget that ultimately those deals will be converted by the salespeople, right? Because they are the feet on the ground. So it is very, very important to kind of ensure that your goal is their goal and their goal is your goal. So it kind of goes hand in that sense. So it's very, very important. Because if they are not very interested in what you are doing, they probably will have no incentive to sort of take up whatever you've done, right? The leads that you've generated, or the prospects that you've engaged. So that's one of the most important things. The second is ensuring that you have an attribution model. So over the years, I've learned something that I've learned is that as a marketer, you will launch hundreds of campaigns, right? Depending on the scale that you operate at, the size of the company that you work in, you launch hundreds of campaigns and you will generate thousands of leads. But when, at the end of the year, you sit down and you try and analyze what happened to all of that, you may not even know half of them, where did they go? So there'll always be a leaky bucket. So I know that you can't fix all of that, but it's very, very important for you to be able to, at the end of the year, say, this campaign generated so many leads. Out of these leads, these many got converted. The ones that did not convert were because of this reason. And these were the various touch points that, we engaged. And, this touch point was where we were able to move a needle, because that's very important. That analysis is important because it will give you a lot of insight for your future campaigns. So fixing that leaky bucket and having a very robust attribution model, however you may choose to, design it. We have a lot of tools available in the market nowadays. So these, I think, are the two most important things if you are into revenue marketing.
That kind of made complete sense, because when we are, everything that gets measured can also get fixed. You can reward the good behavior, so to speak, and you can fix, like you were saying, the leaky bucket. So measuring certainly seems like a good one. And then this beautifully ties up with your previous point, which is that you have to work with the sales team. Because if you're working with them is when you will know at what point is the leaky bucket leaking. Right?
Yeah.
If you're not working with them, you've created the leads, you've handed it off, and it's gone into this black hole that you have no idea about, right? So I hear you, and those are great insights. So thank you so much for sharing those with me, with us. And this kind of comes from also standpoint that demand generation today is really a challenge, right? It's not an easy job. No matter what one is selling, there is always somebody else who's doing it. It's rare for a business to be a huge monopoly, unless I'm thinking maybe if you're a pharma company with a patent, you could be an exception. I'm not even sure if that's an exception. But for most part, demand generation is the biggest challenge, particularly so for B2B companies. And in my head, I'm thinking B2B journey is so different from a B2C sales journey, right? One of the things that I definitely know is that B2B companies do not invest enough in branding. B2C companies are still, while they are trying to sell, they also at least understand that branding is important. But in a B2B company, that's one of the challenges I know we face when we're trying to talk to B2B clients. But other than this, tell me an incident where you thought or you were reminded that this is a different journey or a different cycle altogether. And what was your takeaway from that incident?
I can give you a lot of instances, but one that comes to my mind, which is a more recent one from one of my more recent experiences, is we met this prospect, we generated a lead, we met this prospect. When I say met, I mean like virtually meeting. Somewhere in early 2020, I think it will be April 2020, and everything was going well. We did everything by the book, the way we were supposed to, and touch points that we were supposed to have in a campaign like that. It was a cloud migration campaign, and this prospect was based out of LATAM, so Latin America, and but they would come on every call, they would speak to us, and they had good things to share, and it looked like it was very promising. And then radio silence for months, and then all of a sudden they will wake up and then they'll again send a mail saying, "Oh, we need documents," and then again, after we sent them, radio silence for months. And I'm not a part of that organization anymore, but what I learned, from an ex-colleague is that that prospect is now, that lead is now moving somewhere and it's close to getting closed. I'm not sure if it is closed already, but for 2 years we were at it, and we didn't plan for it. And of course, COVID kind of made things very, very difficult,
Oh yeah.
because one of the key channels, which was face to face meeting, was taken away from us, and we didn't anticipate that at all.
Yeah.
But for those 2 years we were constantly at it. We were trying to keep that a prospect engaged, and it was not just a simple matter of sending an email, right? Because there was this whole buying center that was involved. So it was not just one person. We couldn't say that, Are, I have, influenced this CIO, now my job is done. Because it was not just the CIO, it was the whole department. And, the procurement folks, because wherever procurement gets involved, things become, trickier, because organizations have very stringent procurement processes where you have cycles and cycles of evaluation and validation.
Yeah.
So what I learned from this was that when you plan for a year or a quarter, it is not a plan for that quarter or a year. It is a plan for the next year. So what you're doing today is going to help you close deals the year after, the current one. So if I have created something for 23, it will help me close deals in 24, because of the notoriously long sales cycles that tech products and services have. And that's something that I've experienced over the years, and that is what kind of becomes my baseline whenever I'm creating a plan or a campaign, or I'm planning for, let's say, second half of the year, etc. So that sort of becomes my baseline, that I am not going to achieve anything out of it this year or this quarter. It will be the one after that. So I think that is the most let's say the point of difference that stands out between B2B and B2C. Enormously long sales cycles. And
in fact, as you were narrating this, I realized we have a client who, it took us 3 years to back the client. The CEO of the company was convinced, and typical problem, don't have budgets, you were fantastic, but we cannot afford you, so on and so forth. So we were patient, we kept in touch. We simply kept in touch. We did not push sales. And then the CEO moved from one company to another. And once he moved in and settled down, he asked his marketing manager to call us and said, this time we have the budgets. We don't need your proposal all over again. We'll use the same one because it's the same industry. The deliverables are the same. Are there any changes from your end? We said no. He said, good, when can you start? And it was like this for 3 years. All we had done was, follow up, stay in touch, maintain a rapport, and not pressurize. And when the opportunity arose, it closed. So when you were saying this example, I was thinking that happens to so many of us, and not everything closes, right? We have pitches in the pipeline that have been in the pipeline forever, and they keep coming. They wake up and they go to sleep. They wake up and they go to sleep. It's a cycle, but it was so relatable. And frankly, also very heartening to know that, we're not alone in the journey. There are others like us. It's a B2B thing for sure. And certainly something that motivates us to not give up hope, stay in touch with people. And I'm wondering if, probably basis the plan thing that you spoke about, right? You said what you planned today will kind of yield a year or sometimes even 2 years down the line. And I'm thinking, could therefore picking the right, how they say prospecting. If you're doing the right prospecting, could that be the way to ensure a better conversion rate? And to be able to do that, I'm wondering if ABM is the right way. Do you think that's the right way, especially when one is doing performance marketing? Is ABM the only and best tool?
It is a great tool. Of course, it is one of the best actually. But when we are talking about account-based marketing or ABM, as it is popularly called, it is not just for prospecting. What I have noticed is that a lot of organizations use ABM for existing clients because of the rule that 80% of their revenue would come from existing accounts, and so they have to make sure that they keep those companies engaged. So ABM, in my opinion, in the tech scenario, actually is more relevant for existing businesses. And why I say that is because, see, when you start prospecting a cold client, when you start working on a list of accounts which is absolutely cold, that list is created with the salespeople, right? So they will have their inputs and then they will come back to you and say that, oh, I want to, target these 20 or 200 accounts in whatever region. There will be a rationale as to why they want to do it, but they may not have any connects, and it may not be warm enough for you to be able to engage ABM there, because it's a big, it's an effort intensive exercise, because you need to do a lot of research. So even if you are talking about prospect, your prospect should have reached a certain maturity for you to be able to engage with ABM. You should have some sort of assurance that this is going to give me something down the line. If not today, 2 years down the line or whatever. When you're starting with, let's say, the year, and when you're running campaigns, I don't think that in our scenario, ABM is the best way to go about it. But when your accounts reach a certain maturity, be it existing or new accounts, when you're talking about net new, that's when you should engage ABM, because it is, like I said, very effort intensive. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of research that you have to do about that particular account, or that set of accounts, to create propositions that make sense to them. And you cannot do that for a list of 500, right? So it's for accounts that have reached a certain maturity for both net new as well as existing.
So, if I've understood you correctly, you saying use performance marketing in the larger scheme of things, and ABM when you have a defined target audience, which ideally is either your past clients or prospects that you're absolutely sure are on the verge of closing. Have I understood you correctly?
Not on the verge of closing is what I would say. Where that there is some merit into doing what you're doing. You have some, either the salespeople have some tacit intel that I am sure that this is going to happen. I see a lot of buzz. They're hiring a lot of cloud people. Maybe something around cloud is going to happen. So that kind of becomes, those are the triggers for you to start with an ABM, because whenever you will initiate a campaign, you will have a long list, right? And from them, that you'll derive a short list, which will then become your ABM list.
That makes sense. In fact, as you were speaking, I was thinking, if one knows that there is a requirement in the company, for example, that could be a big trigger. When you know that the requirement exists, that even if they are not your client, but you have a very strong source of information, and for a fact that there's a requirement in the company, maybe that is a good point. Because one of the things that I must tell you is we have this community called same name, Secrets of a B2B Marketer, which is a community of B2B marketers. And a few weeks ago, we had a very strong discussion around ABM. And this was one of the points that had come up on, at what point is ABM right or wrong? And maybe not necessarily right or wrong, but, sometimes you have a higher success rate than others. So from that perspective, do you have any thoughts also in, or maybe an experience, or as we would like to call a secret, that you have when ABM works best beyond what you have already taught us? Something that's more executable.
So for ABM, one thing that I have experienced is that you cannot have a one-size-fits-all approach. You cannot say that, oh, this is my bouquet of channels and tactics that I have, and this is what we do. This is what we've been historically doing. So I will use whatever is available in the menu. And then, but that may not necessarily work for you, and it is possible that midway you may have to go back to the drawing board, because you realize that none of this is going to work for specific reasons. So I'll give you an example. Again, from one of my previous experiences, we were trying our best to engage with the client, and it was a fairly large organization and a very important client for us at that time. And we had tried everything under the sun, meet and greets and whatever the ABM playbook is. And then we found out that one of the areas that is very close to their heart is gender diversity. Now, this was something we had never we didn't know this, and so we started doing a few things, big and small. We started with like baby steps, and we said, okay, let's do a webinar around gender diversity, and it will work well, and it really did. It created a big impact. So again, that was something that was not in the playbook. So some of that will have to be, I would say, you will constantly be course correcting when it comes to ABM, because things will change, their environment will change, so you will have to constantly course correct, is what I've understood. And ABM is not about pitching what you have to the customer, right? ABM is understanding the customer so well that you can actually tell that hey, I have something that you might find interesting. It could be a book, it could be anything, but it's about
could be our podcast.
Yeah, maybe. So it's about that.
Sure. No, this makes sense. And in a way, this podcast for us has been one of the tools in the kitty, right? Because it's not that we are prospecting in HCL Tech, or it's not like we're chasing your business, but it's nice opportunity for us to connect with you. How else am I going to get to speak to you and spend 30 minutes with you with, the way we're doing? So podcasts are a growing way of connecting with people. Any other tools you can think of? And that's my, in fact, you know what, let me quickly move you to my rapid fire and put this as the first question to you. Tools, your favorite tools for ABM and performance marketing.
It's like trying to pick your favorite child. No, I don't think that I'll be able to tell you like a favorite tool, because as much as channels are important to me, all the work that happens in the background is also important. So I think it's the tech stack and how carefully you will choose it, when it comes to the backend, and obviously ensuring that even if it is podcast, for example, or we are very, very big on roundtables. Tech marketers are very big on roundtables. Yes. So whatever tool it is, it has to ensure that you are getting that face time with your client, and not in a salesy way. So I can't pick and choose like the favorite one, but I think whatever helps you get those 30 minutes, like you said, with your customer will become my favorite tool, will be the flavor of the month for that time.
Okay, very valid point. So top of the mind, what are some of these? One, like we said, there's podcast, there's roundtable, I'm guessing white papers.
White papers, yes. But I think, what I started feeling is white papers are kind of losing their sanctity now, because we are doing a lot of it, right? So what I feel is, and nobody, let's say a C-level executive may not even have time to go through like a 6-page, 7-page white paper. So what I started doing very early on was started repurposing white papers into smaller, more snackable content forms, so that it is visible on the screen, and everybody's on the screen constantly, right? So something that is doable. So podcasts, white papers, roundtables, sometimes even awards become a very important sort of factor, because when you're nominating your client for an award, you're nominating yourself as well in a sense, because you're the one who kind of executed that whole project. So even awards sometimes play a very important role. So I don't think, like I said, I can pick and choose one.
Okay, valid. Okay, what are your thoughts on content marketing?
Very important. I think it's the most important function within marketing, and in technology, right? Content is your showcase. That's the only showcase you have, because that is what goes everywhere on the visible collateral and what is not visible. When you're seeding these things in the market, so your posts on LinkedIn or your press releases that you do, it is all content and how you place it. So it's a very, very important function, and I think it should not be left to just 2 or 3 people. When I say 2 or 3 people, I mean just, it cannot be the KRA of just 2 or 3 content people. Everybody in the organization has to contribute to it, especially the subject matter experts and the senior people. So extremely important.
Yeah, valid point. And from this performance marketing, because a lot of people think it's the other end of the spectrum.
Performance marketing may not be very, very popular within the marketing circle because it does not really, let's say, involve the big ticket items that branding has, right? So we may not, we may not get to do, um, um, 10 sponsorships or, promote at big events, but it is very important because drop by drop it adds to the top line of the company, and it is one thing. What I love about performance marketing is it's very tangible. You can tell exactly what you're going to achieve after you've done what you've done for 6 months, and you will always have a way to sort of influence the end customer or the client, the company's, the firm's client. And so that's what is amazing about it, that you're not doing something and it's going into a black hole. You're doing something which is very tangible and it will give you results, and you can actually say whether or not you're good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And so, personally, I feel marketers love jargons. But I hate them, but I see other marketers and I hear these ABM and performance marketing and revenue marketing and content marketing. And to me, it's a mix. Do you feel the same way?
Sometimes I do, and that is because I also, I come from a time I started when none of these existed, right? So these terms did not exist, and but I also feel that it's good in a way that we have kind of institutionalized some of these things. So now there is a lot of focus. So earlier, when we used to hire people, we were looking at like a vanilla marketing person who would have done a bit of this and a bit of that. But now when we hire people, we're looking at performance marketers who should have, a certain number of years of experience doing exactly that. So it has kind of, and personally for me, like I said, back then when I started, there wasn't a term for this. But and I always used to wonder, what am I even doing? Because I'm not doing branding, I am not doing content, I am not an analyst and advisory person. What am I really doing? But yeah, I mean, I'm so happy. Personally, I'm very happy that this terms kind of come up, and it's given people like me an identity that yes, we are performance marketers and we are business marketers.
Okay, valid point. Very valid. When you were speaking about this, I was also thinking that, interestingly, you used the word vanilla. And my company, as you probably know, is called Vanilla Scales, right? When we started Vanilla Scales, it was an entirely different context, okay? This whole vanilla, the way you used it, terminology did not exist. Ironically, we are specialists, not the vanilla in context of somebody who does everything. We're specialists in B2B marketing. We've said no to more B2C, D2C, B2G, all of those businesses, because we are that niche. And that this is what I have against the terminology, because it puts you into this box and does not allow you to look out. But we keep breaking the barriers all the time. We've been doing that. We've been an innovation company within the space of marketing that way. So it's interesting. It's interesting to have a different perspective, why it's important for somebody like you that the terminology exists, and why for companies like us, it's important that it does not exist. And they both go hand in hand. So it's a very interesting discussion.
Thank you. I'll be careful to use the term vanilla again in future.
No, I did not mean to put you in a situation like that. You're welcome to use it. But it's an interesting perspective for us, and certainly food for thought for us on, when we say Vanilla Skills, what are people seeing about us, right? So that's also an important food for thought that I take away from this conversation. So thank you. I'm glad we could discuss this. Which I'm looking at the clock and I'm thinking I've taken up a lot of the time, probably more than you promised us. So one quick last question to you is, if our listeners want to reach out to you, and probably if they have more questions or if they want to ask you, where can they reach you or find you online?
LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to connect. So I'm there on LinkedIn, and I will share my profile details as well. And I think that's the place.
Perfect. So we will make sure that in the description, there is a link to your LinkedIn profile, and people are welcome to follow you. Maybe they can message you, they can reach out to you and ask questions if they have.
Sure.
This was such a power-packed time. I got so much information. Sales needs to work hand in hand with marketing. You need to measure your analytics. You need to be careful about when you use ABM, when you use performance marketing. We've learned about your favorite tools. So, superb discussion. Thank you so much for your time, Garima. And I truly hope that we can continue our interactions with you and discussions with you. I would love to pick your brain more some other time, maybe not when we are on air, and perhaps discuss how we can, learn from each other.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me, Benita. It was lovely. It's rarely that B2B marketers get to discuss, because we're a small community, right? So it was lovely, and I would love to continue with this conversation offline as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.